The Galactic Senate chamber echoed with the final tally, 78% in favor of Daxamite termination. Ambassador Greg Thomas smacked his palm on the Durasteel console, the impact reverberating through the polished chrome and alien bioluminescence. A death sentence, broadcast across 1,000 worlds, for people he'd sworn to protect. He tasted bile, a familiar cocktail of outrage and the cheap synth whiskey he'd been nursing since the rot had truly set into the Senate's core. They had promised to safeguard all races, great and small, but credits spoke louder than oaths these days. A flicker, a phantom limb of memory. Greg was younger, pinned beneath a burning transport on a desolate moon. A Daxamite soldier, larger than life in his crimson armor, hauled him free, ignoring the plasma fire scorching the ground around them. "Take this," the Daxamite rasped, pressing a small, intricately carved medallion into Greg's trembling hand. "For my family. Tell them. Gratitude." The soldier collapsed, a sacrifice swallowed by the smoke and fire. Galactic News Network blared from a wall screen in the Senate chamber, the volume cranked high to drown out the murmurs of dissent. Senate unanimously approves Daxamite termination. Flagrant violation of galactic treaties. Development of forbidden weapon. Images flashed, grainy footage of what appeared to be a massive cannon, superimposed with ominous warnings. Protests erupted on a dozen worlds, humans and aliens alike holding signs decrying the injustice. The accusations, always the accusations, rang hollow in Greg's ears. Back in his stark, utilitarian office, the synth whiskey bottle was half empty. Rain lashed against the panoramic window, mirroring the storm inside him. Defy the Senate. Risk his career, his freedom, maybe his life. The thought, once unthinkable, now felt inevitable. He ran a hand over his grizzled hair, the weight of responsibility pressing down. He called up the official Senate report on the Daxamite violations. The file swam before his eyes, blurred by fatigue and drink. But as he scrolled through the data, something caught his attention, a discrepancy in the weapon schematics, a missing signature on a key treaty amendment, a conveniently misplaced witness statement. The deeper he dug, the more the narrative unraveled. This wasn't justice, it was a damn execution. He had to do something, anything. He would do what was right this time. 50 years ago, the Daxamites brokered a peace agreement between 3 warring factions in the Pleiades galaxy, factions that had been locked in a brutal cycle of violence for centuries. A testament to their diplomatic skill, their unwavering commitment to peace. The Extinction vote made no sense. Greg activated his comm and hailed Senator Lyra, a Centauran known for her sharp mind and even sharper tongue. She had been an ally once, a voice of reason in the Senate's increasingly chaotic chorus. "Lyra, it's Greg. I need to talk to you about the Daxamite vote." Her image flickered onto his screen, her normally vibrant face drawn and pale. "Greg, I can't. Not now. Goran." Senator Goran has made it very clear that any support for the Daxamites will be unwise. The connection severed with a click. Senator Goran, the Krill senator, a known xenophobe with a personal vendetta against the Daxamites, wielded considerable power. He returned to the classified documents, his gaze sharpening. He noticed a coded transmission embedded within a seemingly innocuous trade agreement. He decrypted it with a program he hadn't used in years. The message was brief, cryptic, but undeniably linked to Daxam Prime, the Daxamite homeworld, and its vast mineral wealth. Something was rotten in the state of the galaxy. Greg activated a secure channel and contacted a former intelligence contact, a grizzled Salarian named Krell, now supposedly retired on a remote space station. "Krell, it's Thomas. I need some information." "Senator Goran, Krill race. What's the connection to Daxam Prime?" As the Salarian's image materialized, Greg already was packing a bag, a battered service pistol nestled among the necessities. He was leaving the Senate building. He was defying a direct order to remain and assist with the orderly relocation, The euphemism dripped with icy malice of the Daxamites. His hand brushed against something cool and smooth in his pocket. The medallion. He pulled it out, the intricate carvings catching the dim light of his office. He had carried it for years, a silent reminder of a debt unpaid. He knew now what he had to do. He had to return it. The Senate chamber echoed with the phantom clang of the final vote. Greg Thomas, nucleus tightening against the console, ripped off his headset. He needed to move. Now, he bypassed the security protocols, routing himself through restricted Senate databases, Daxamite refugee safe houses. The known ones, at least. Each ping brought a surge of adrenaline, quickly followed by a sickening drop. Abandoned, destroyed. The holographic schematics showed scorch marks, structural collapses, the unmistakable signature of energy weapons. The Daxamites hadn't even been given a chance. He slammed a fist on the console, the metal groaning under the impact. He needed something more. He activated a secure channel, his voice a low rasp. "This is Nightingale. I need a thread. Old song, industrial lullaby." Static crackled for a moment, then a gruff voice responded, "Nightingale. Haven't heard that call in years. Coordinates incoming. But be warned, Nightingale. That sector's a graveyard even before the cleanup crews get there. And Krill are always watching." The grimy air of the disused industrial sector hung thick with the stench of decay and ozone. Twisted metal skeletons clawed at the perpetually overcast sky. Greg navigated the labyrinthine corridors, his boots crunching on shattered ferrocrete. He reached the designated coordinates, a massive, derelict processing plant. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of disinfectant and fear. Shadows flickered and eyes, wide and wary, followed his every move. A figure emerged from the gloom, tall even for a Daxamite, with skin the color of polished obsidian and eyes that burned with defiant fire. "Stella." "Ambassador Thomas," she said, her voice a low growl. "The Senate voted us to die. Why should we believe any human now?" Greg met her gaze, his own unwavering. "Because I don't believe in genocide, Stella, and because I owe your people a debt." Stella's eyes narrowed. She gestured around the cavernous space. "Look around you, Ambassador. Dwindling supplies, sickness spreading like rot, and every shadow holds the threat of the Krill." She swept her arm, indicating the state of the camp. "The rogue faction hunts us, and the Senate, your Senate, has given them a license to kill." A memory flashed. Stella, standing in a vast library, surrounded by towering stacks of data crystals. She was overseeing a team meticulously archiving Daxamite history, culture, everything. Senator Gorin, his Krill features cold and reptilian, materialized before her. "This obsession with the past, historian," he'd hissed, his voice dripping with disdain. "It ends now. Destroy these records, forget your history, or face the consequences." Greg snapped back to the present. He noticed a cluster of children huddled together, their faces flushed, their breathing ragged. A hacking cough echoed through the chamber. "What's wrong with them?" "Contagion," Stella said grimly. "No medicine, no hope." Greg knelt beside one of the children, his hand hovering over his fevered brow. "I can help. I have resources. I can get them medical attention. I promise you, Stella, I'll find a cure." Stella watched him, her expression unreadable. "Promises are cheap, Ambassador. Actions have weight." She straightened, her gaze hardening. "Prove your sincerity. There's a black market hub in Sector Gamma. It's a cesspool of scum and villainy, but they have what we need: antibiotics, nutrient supplements, water purifiers. Secure them. Bring them back here. Then and only then will I consider trusting you." The black market throbbed with a chaotic energy. Xenos hawked illicit wares, their voices a cacophony of alien tongues. Greg moved through the crowd, his senses on high alert. He knew this place. He'd operated in shadows like these before. He found his contact, a shifty-eyed Rhodian named Jax, huddled in a darkened alcove. A brief exchange of credits and whispered codes, and Jax led him to a hidden cache. The supplies were there, but so was trouble. A hulking brute of a Trandoshan blocked his path, His reptilian eyes narrowed in suspicion. A tense negotiation turned violent in seconds. Greg moved with brutal efficiency, disarming and disabling the Trandoshan and his cronies with a series of lightning-fast strikes. He secured the supplies and vanished back into the crowd, leaving a trail of bruised bodies in his wake. He returned to the refugee camp, the promised supplies stacked high. A cheer erupted from the Daxamites. Even Stella seemed impressed, a flicker of something akin to gratitude in her eyes, but her expression quickly hardened. "You secured the medicine," she acknowledged, "but your methods. They remind me of the very humans who condemned us. Violence comes too easily to your kind." Suddenly, a piercing shriek cut through the air. A Daxamite lookout perched atop a rusted crane pointed towards the horizon. "Krill, rogue faction patrol approaching." Panic erupted. Refugees scrambled for cover, their faces etched with terror. Stella barked orders, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Barricades, prepare for defense. Seal the perimeter." She turned to Greg, her eyes filled with unshakable focus. "This is it, Ambassador. This is where we see if your promises mean anything." The rogue faction patrol materialized from the gloom, black armored figures wielding stun weapons and sonic disruptors. They advanced with ruthless efficiency, their faces hidden behind opaque visors. A wave of sonic energy washed over the camp, sending refugees writhing to the ground in agony. Greg moved like a phantom, using his knowledge of cover and concealment to his advantage. He took down the lead troopers with precise shots from a salvaged pulse rifle, creating momentary chaos. He shielded Stella from a stun blast, pushing her behind a stack of rusted containers. "Get the children to safety," he yelled over the din. "I'll hold them off." Working together, Greg and Stella coordinated the evacuation of the children and injured. Stella directed the refugees through a hidden escape route, while Greg laid down a withering barrage of fire, drawing the rogue faction away from their path. The rogue faction leader, a hulking Krill in heavily modified armor, recognized Greg. "Thomas," he bellowed, his voice distorted by a vocoder. "Capture him, alive. Senator Gorin wants him dealt with personally." Greg knew then this wasn't just about eliminating the Daxamites. They were after him, specifically. He exchanged a look with Stella, a silent understanding passing between them. It was time to go. With the rogue faction closing in, Greg and Stella, along with a handful of able-bodied refugees, slipped through a hidden access tunnel, leaving the camp to its fate. They emerged into the sprawling industrial sector, the sounds of battle fading behind them. Greg, using his knowledge of the ships from his military training, was able to disable the ships. But the rogue faction wouldn't give up so easily. Reinforcements were on their way. They were on the run, hunted through the maze of rusted metal and decaying machinery. Supplies were dwindling, hope fading with each passing hour. Greg activated a secure comm channel, his voice tight with desperation. "Nightingale to Falcon, I need extraction. Now. Repeat, I need extraction now." The response was grim. "Nightingale, this is Falcon, I have intel. Gorin himself issued the kill order on the Daxamites, and on you, Nightingale, you've made a powerful enemy." The tunnel air hung thick with the metallic tang of stale coolant and fear. Greg, Stella close behind, risked a glance back. The heavy thud of boots echoed closer. The rogue faction soldiers were relentless. He pushed forward, the low ceiling scraping against his back. "Almost there," he rasped, his voice tight. "Military maintenance tunnel. They won't expect it." Emerging into the dim light of the trading outpost felt like a breath of fresh air, even if that air reeked of spice, engine grease, and desperation. The outpost, a cluster of ramshackle buildings clinging to the edge of the industrial sector, was a kaleidoscope of alien species, a haven for those who preferred the shadows. Gambling dens pulsed with neon light, and the air vibrated with the guttural pronouncements of various merchants. This was Whisper's territory. Greg led Stella through the crowded marketplace, his eyes scanning for any sign of trouble. "Stay close," he muttered. "This place attracts all sorts." He guided her to a darkened doorway tucked between a spice den and a droid repair shop. He rapped a coded rhythm on the metal, 3 shorts, 2 longs, 1 short. The door hissed open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with flickering holographic displays and stacks of data chips. A figure emerged from the shadows, his face etched with wrinkles and his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Thomas," Whisper rasped, his voice like gravel on metal. "Didn't expect to see you back here, especially not with her." He gestured towards Stella with a dismissive wave. Greg stepped forward. "I need your help, Whisper. The Senate vote. It went through. They're hunting Daxamites." Whisper snorted. "Galactic politics. Never pays to get involved." He turned to leave. "I saved your life on Taurus, remember?" Greg's voice was a low growl. "You owe me." Whisper stopped, his shoulders slumping. He sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. "Fine. But this is going to cost you, Thomas. Big time. The rogue faction has put a bounty on both of you," Whisper revealed, his gaze flickering between Greg and Stella. "A substantial one, enough to make even the most hardened smuggler think twice about helping you." He tapped a holographic display, revealing distorted images of Greg and Stella, their faces marked with a red target symbol. "Word is, Goran wants you both dead." Back in the cramped room Whisper had provided, tensions simmered amongst the refugees. Rations were dwindling and suspicion festered like a wound. Eyes darted around the room, each refugee wary of the others. "Someone is taking more than their share," a gruff voice accused, belonging to a hulking Granian. "My family has barely eaten in days." Another refugee, a nervous-looking Fluvian, stammered, "I haven't touched anything, I swear." Stella stepped forward, her voice sharp. "I've been watching you, Fluvian. I saw you slipping extra rations into your pack last night." The Fluvian recoiled, his antennae twitching nervously. I needed it for my children." "We all have children," Stella retorted, her eyes blazing. "But we don't steal from each other." Greg stepped between them, his hands raised in a calming gesture. "Enough, we need to stick together. Accusations won't help us." He pulled out his own ration pack, still sealed. "Here," he said, offering it to the Granian's family. "Share this, we'll figure something out." He met Stella's gaze, a silent plea for understanding. Later, huddled with Whisper in his cluttered office, Greg reviewed the data chips. "Goran is behind this," he said, his voice tight with anger. "He's funding the rogue faction, orchestrating the attacks." Whisper nodded grimly. "Not just against the Daxamites. He's targeting anyone who opposes his policies. Krill expansion, resource exploitation. He's a cancer, Thomas." Suddenly, Stella entered, her eyes wide. "I deciphered something," she said, holding up a small, intricately carved Daxamite artifact. "A hidden message. It speaks of a research facility, one connected to the so-called weapon." "It's not a weapon," Stella insisted, her voice infused with conviction. "The message. It hints that it's a terraforming device, designed to restore damaged ecosystems. It specifically mentions Daxam Prime's ravaged state after the war. The facility coordinates are encrypted," Stella said, pointing to a series of complex symbols on the artifact. "But I think I can unlock them. It will take time." Greg looked at Stella, then back at Whisper. "We need to find that facility. Prove the Daxamites' intentions were peaceful." As Greg and Stella prepared to leave, a shadow fell across the doorway. It was the Granian, his face contorted with fear. "They're here," he whispered, his voice trembling. "The rogue faction. They're attacking the outpost." Chaos erupted outside. Blaster fire echoed through the narrow streets and screams pierced the air. Greg grabbed his sidearm, his heart pounding. "Stella, get the refugees to safety." He burst out into the marketplace, finding it engulfed in flames and littered with debris. Rogue faction soldiers, clad in black armor, moved through the chaos, firing indiscriminately. When they returned, the outpost was a smoldering ruin. Bodies lay scattered among the wreckage. The refugees were gone. Greg knelt, his fist clenching the scorched earth. "Damn it," he breathed, his voice thick with despair. "We were too late." Stella stood beside him, her face pale with grief. "They took them," she whispered. "They took our people." Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a Fluvian, his antennae drooping with shame. He approached Greg and Stella, his voice barely audible. I told them," he confessed, his eyes filled with tears. "I told them where you were." Stella stepped forward, her hand instinctively reaching for her weapon. "You betrayed us." The Fluvian flinched. "They promised me freedom, resources for my family. I had no choice." Stella stared at him, her expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. But then something shifted in her eyes, a flicker of understanding. "You did what you had to do to protect your loved ones," she said, her voice softer now. "I may not forgive you, but I understand." Greg found a small data chip clutched in the hand of a fallen refugee. He plugged it into his wrist-mounted computer. A coded message flickered across the screen. "It's a location," he said, his voice grim. "A rogue faction stronghold, outside the city." As they studied the message, Greg realized the terraforming device schematics were their only hope. "We can use these to negotiate," he said, his mind racing. "To get our people back." Greg looked at Stella. "But if we can't get them back, we can use the device schematics to destroy the rogue faction's operation. Is that something you are willing to do?" Greg realized that they can use the device schematics to destroy the rogue faction's operation if they are unable to get the refugees back. "I can use my Senate credentials to get close to the site," Greg said, "while you hack into the mainframe." Stella nodded. "I can do that, but it will take time." "While you are doing that," Greg said, "see if you can find out what they are transporting off the planet." Stella was able to get into the mainframe and discovered that the Krill are transporting an illegal weapon off the planet. The transport, bearing the official seal of the Galactic Senate, glided through the main gate, Greg's forged authorization codes flashing green on the scanner. Stella, hunched low in the passenger seat beside him, tapped furiously at her datapad, overriding secondary security protocols with practiced ease. The air hung thick with the metallic tang of industry and the low thrum of heavy machinery. "Secondary checkpoint ahead, Ambassador," Stella murmured, her eyes glued to the datapad. "Requesting visual confirmation." Greg straightened his uniform, forcing a confident smile. "Leave it to me." He activated the comms. "This is Ambassador Thomas, Senate Oversight Committee conducting a routine inspection. Please verify clearance code Sierra Tango 747. A gruff voice crackled back, filled with suspicion. "Sierra Tango, verify transport manifest." Greg felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple. Stella's fingers danced across the screen. "Manifest verified," the voice finally conceded. "Proceed with caution, Ambassador. Restricted zone." They passed through, the heavy blast doors grinding shut behind them. The stronghold's interior was a labyrinth of dimly lit corridors and echoing chambers, the air thick with the smell of ozone and desperation. They found them in the factory level, gaunt figures toiling at workbenches under the watchful eyes of Krill overseers. Daxamites, their faces etched with exhaustion and despair, were assembling components for weapons. The sight of their forced labor was like a physical blow to Stella. Her breath hitched, and her hand instinctively went to the disruptor pistol hidden beneath her jacket. "Easy," Greg murmured, placing a hand on her arm. "We need to stick to the plan. First, Anya." They moved deeper into the facility, following Stella's hacked schematics to the detention level. The cells were small and dank, the air heavy with the stench of stale, recycled air and hopelessness. In the last cell on the row, a figure huddled in the corner. "Anya Petrova?" Greg asked, his voice low. The figure looked up, her eyes wide with fear. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" "We're here to help you," Stella said, her voice gentle. "We know what they're doing here." Anya hesitated, her gaze darting between Greg and Stella. You know about the weapon." "And Senator Gorin's involvement," Greg added. Anya visibly sagged, relief washing over her face. "Thank the stars. I couldn't stand it anymore. The things they're making us build. It's monstrous. Can you help us get out of here?" Greg asked. "And free the others?" Anya nodded, her eyes hardening with tenacity. There's a weakness in the security grid, a bypass in the central server room. I designed it, actually, as a failsafe in case. Well, never mind. I can disable the alarms, give you a window, but I need to get off this rock. Greg frowned. Safe passage is part of the deal, but I can't promise you immunity. I don't care about immunity, Anya said, her voice shaking. Just get me away from these butchers. Greg looked at Stella, a silent question in his eyes. Stella studied Anya's face, searching for any sign of deceit. She's genuine, Greg. I can feel it. She's desperate. Greg sighed. All right, Anya, you're with us. Anya led them to a hidden terminal near the main factory floor, her fingers flying across the console. Almost there. Got it. The schematics for that terraforming device. They've been running simulations trying to reverse engineer it. Anya's face twisted in disgust. They found a flaw, a critical error in the core matrix. It's useless as it is. Useless. Stella's voice was tight with disappointment. Yes, but I know how to fix it, or I knew. It requires rare isotopes only found in the Krill's research labs. Anya glanced at Greg. That's where I used to work. Greg rubbed his temples. This was getting more complicated by the minute. All right, new plan. Anya, you disable the security grid. Stella and I will create a diversion with the schematics. Draw the guards away from the detention level. Then we free the refugees. And the isotopes? Stella asked. One thing at a time, Greg said grimly. Let's get our people out first. The diversion worked perfectly. Greg, holding aloft a datapad displaying the terraforming device schematics, shouted about a critical security breach, drawing the attention of the guards. Stella and Anya slipped away towards the detention level. The prison cells opened with a hiss, and the Daxamite refugees poured out, blinking in the dim light. Chaos erupted as they overwhelmed the remaining guards. Suddenly, a booming voice echoed through the factory. What is the meaning of this? Commander Vark, a hulking figure clad in black armor, strode into the room, his eyes glowing with crimson light. Cybernetic implants gleamed beneath his skin, enhancing his already formidable physique. Ambassador Thomas, Vark snarled, his voice a synthesized growl. I should have known you were behind this. Vark, Greg said, his hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. This ends now. It ends with your death, Ambassador, Vark said, raising a massive cybernetic arm, and the extermination of the Daxamite vermin. You're too late, Stella said, stepping forward. We know about the Krill weapon. We know what you're planning to do to Daxam Prime. Vark laughed, a harsh, grating sound. You know nothing. That device, he spat, was originally designed by the Krill, stolen by your ancestors, then misused and broken. We are simply reclaiming what is rightfully ours. Vark lunged, his cybernetic arm a blur of motion. Greg dodged, firing his disruptor pistol. The blast slammed into Vark's armor, momentarily staggering him. Stella moved and closed, targeting the exposed neural interface on Vark's neck. She knew the Daxamite designs intimately and also knew the human modifications. Now, Stella, Greg yelled. Stella unleashed a precise burst from her disruptor. Vark roared in pain, his body convulsing as his cybernetics short-circuited. He crashed to the ground, twitching and sputtering. Get the refugees out of here. Greg shouted, now. Most of the refugees scrambled towards the exit, but a small group remained, huddled together near the assembly line. Krill's soldiers, weapons trained on their heads, forced them to continue working on the Krill weapon. Greg cursed. They were trapped. He approached one of the consoles. A series of blueprints were displayed, showing the weapon's structure. Stella, look at this. This isn't just a weapon. It's a magnetic field disruptor. It's designed to destabilize planetary cores. Daxam Prime, Stella breathed, her face pale. They're going to use it on our homeworld. Worse, Anya said, her voice tight. I just accessed their comm logs. They're planning to test it. On another inhabited planet, a smaller one to gauge the effects. Greg stared at the hostages, then at the weapon. He knew what he had to do. Anya, can you override the facility's self-destruct sequence? Anya looked at him, her eyes wide with horror. You can't, there are still people here. I know, Greg said, his voice heavy with pain. But we can't let that weapon fall into their hands. It's the only way to stop them. Stella met his gaze, her expression a mixture of grief and understanding. Do it, Greg. Save as many as you can. Anya, her hands trembling, began to input the override codes. Alarms blared as the facility went into lockdown. Everyone move, Greg shouted. We have to get out of here. They raced through the corridors, the ground shaking beneath their feet. Explosions rocked the facility as the self-destruct sequence initiated. They reached the hangar just as the transport shuddered to life, its engines screaming. They barely cleared the blast zone as the stronghold erupted in a ball of fire and debris. Greg watched, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision. Anya, her face streaked with tears, pointed to a set of coordinates on her datapad. There's a hidden cache, a supply depot. The Daxamites left it behind years ago before the war. Food, medicine, weapons. Enough to survive. As they set course for the coordinates, a message flashed across the comm screen. Unidentified Krill warships detected, engaging planetary defenses on Eden Prime. Greg banged his hand on the console. Damn it, they're already testing the weapon. Vark, heavily wounded, watched the transport escape from a hidden escape pod. They may have won this battle, Vark said to himself, but the war is far from finished. The transport shuddered as it settled onto the cracked duracrete of what was once a landing pad. Relief washed over the refugees, etched on their lavender faces as they disembarked, stretching stiff limbs. The air hung heavy with the scent of ozone and decay, a metallic tang underlying the musty smell of disuse. Before them stood a massive structure, half buried in the ochre dust of the planetoid, a Daxamite research facility, dormant but not dead. Stella, her violet eyes scanning the structure with a practiced gaze, guided her chair forward. This facility, it's older than I thought. A pre-collapse research outpost, remarkable. She paused near a sealed blast door, its surface scarred with scorch marks. There, Section Gamma 7, Specialized Lab, Advanced Material Synthesis. A flicker of hope ignited in her eyes. If the equipment is still functional, we might be able to. Anya, her brow furrowed in concentration, accessed the facility's schematics via her wrist-mounted datapad. The lab's isolinear processors are intact but require significant recalibration. More importantly, she continued, her voice tight, it has the capacity to refine the materials we salvaged. We could synthesize a compound strong enough to, well, patch the terraforming device. But the energy requirements, they're astronomical. We'd need a source of concentrated dark energy, something highly unstable. As Anya spoke, Greg's comm unit crackled to life. Senator Valerius's voice, hushed and urgent, filled the cramped space. Greg, I have disturbing news. The Krill are circumventing the Senate blockade. They're using a cloaked fleet. Low-energy signatures undetectable by conventional sensors. They're heading straight for Daxam Prime. The air in the transport bay seemed to thicken. Cloaked. Greg's voice was a low growl. How is that possible? Krill experimental technology. Top secret. I can't say more on a secure channel, but conventional Daxamite defenses will be useless against them. Valerius's voice trailed off, leaving a chilling silence. Stella, meanwhile, had been poring over recovered data logs, her fingers flying across the console. She straightened abruptly, her face a mask of grim realization. The logs. Encrypted, but I've cracked the primary cipher, the terraforming device. It wasn't meant to be a weapon. It was designed to heal a planet. A planet ravaged by Krill warfare centuries ago. Her voice was imbued with bitter irony. They framed us for trying to destroy, using a tool meant to rebuild from their destruction. A sudden alarm blared through the facility. Red lights flashed, bathing the transport bay in an ominous glow. Intruder alert! Intruder alert! The facility's automated voice shrieked. Before anyone could react, laser fire erupted from the shadows. Refugees screamed, scattering for cover behind crates and overturned equipment. A squad of Krill soldiers led by Vark emerged from the darkness, their weapons spitting emerald energy bolts. Anya, Vark's voice boomed, distorted by his helmet's vocoder. You can't hide forever. Come quietly and maybe I'll let the others live. Anya, surprisingly, didn't cower. She moved with a swiftness that belied her scientific demeanor, grabbing a discarded energy pistol from a fallen refugee. Vark lunged, his vibroblade humming, but Anya sidestepped the attack with practiced ease. In a blur of motion, she disarmed him, sending his blade clattering across the duracrete. Her movements were too precise, too efficient for a scientist. Greg stared in disbelief. Anya, what was that? Anya lowered the pistol, her face pale. Before I became a scientist, I was something else, something I'm not proud of. She hesitated, then confessed, I was a Krill special operative, sabotage, espionage, wet work. I worked with Vark on several missions. A collective gasp rippled through the refugees. Stella's eyes narrowed, suspicion hardening her features. You were a Krill? Anya nodded, shame etched on her face. Yes, but I left that life behind. I defected. I saw the truth about the Krill. I wanted to atone for my sins. Vark, scrambling to his feet, activated a small device on his wrist. A faint, high-pitched whine filled the air, almost imperceptible. He grinned, a cruel, predatory expression. Enjoy your little reunion. You just led my fleet right to you. The hunt is on. He vanished into the shadows, leaving behind only the lingering scent of ozone and the chilling realization that they had been betrayed. Greg cursed under his breath. He planted a tracking beacon. The fleet will be here within hours. Anya, her voice barely a whisper, provided the next blow. The unstable energy source. It's located on asteroid KL-42, a mining colony. Krill occupied. Greg rubbed his temples, trying to process the avalanche of information. So, let me get this straight. We need a highly unstable energy source from a Krill-occupied mining colony to fix a terraforming device that will save Daxam Prime from a cloaked Krill fleet. All while being hunted by a Krill special operative who just revealed she used to be a Krill special operative. He looked at Anya with a mixture of disbelief and reluctant admiration. Anyone else have any surprises for me? He took a deep breath. Okay, here's the plan. Anya, you said we could refine the materials here, right? Could we create a temporary cloaking device for our ship, just long enough to slip past the Krill fleet and reach Daxam Prime? Anya considered the schematics on her datapad. Theoretically, yes, but the compound would be incredibly volatile. The cloak would be fragile. One wrong move, one energy surge, and we'd be exposed, and the refining process would take time. Time we don't have, Stella interjected, her voice tight with apprehension. This is insane, Greg. We're leading these people into another trap. She turned her gaze towards Anya. How can we trust her? Greg met Stella's gaze, his own filled with a quiet determination. I know it's a risk, Stella, but we're out of options. We have to trust someone. He turned back to Stella, a familiar weariness settling into his features. I want to tell you something. Back when I was saved by the Daxamite soldier, he entrusted me with a small child's toy. I promised him I'd return it to his family. I never did. Took it as a sign I could not be trusted. I vowed to never make an empty promise again, and I took it as a sign that I could not be trusted. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden bird. This is it. He said it was his daughter's favorite. I want you to have it. Keep it safe. It's a promise, Stella. A promise that I'll do everything in my power to protect your people. Anya worked with frantic intensity, her fingers flying across the isolinear processors. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the air crackled with energy. Outside, the refugees huddled together, their faces etched with fear as the minutes ticked by, each one bringing the Krill fleet closer. As they worked, a rare moment of vulnerability passed between Greg and Stella. Greg, Stella began, her voice soft. I never thought I would feel this way again after everything, after losing so much. She trailed off, unable to find the words. Greg reached out and gently took her hand. "I know," he said, his voice low. "Me neither." He squeezed her hand, a silent promise of protection and shared hope. Suddenly, a piercing distress signal shattered the tense silence. A voice, strained and desperate, crackled over the comms. "This is mining colony KL-42. We are under attack. The Krill are preparing to destroy the colony to prevent the rebels from acquiring the energy source. We need immediate assistance." Greg's face hardened. He knew what this meant. He had a choice to make. Proceed to Daxam Prime, clinging to the hope of saving his people, or divert to rescue the miners, potentially dooming the entire planet. He closed his eyes, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on him. The comm crackled again. This time, a different voice, older and more resolute, spoke. "This is Foreman Tarok. We have a counter-weapon, a magnetic pulse disruptor, but we are trapped deep inside the planet. We need immediate assistance and time is running out for us and for Daxam." Greg looked at Anya, her face grim but resolute. "Anya, take a small team. Rescue those miners, they're sitting ducks." He paused, a hard edge entering his voice. "Vark will be there, he's predictable." Anya nodded, understanding flashing in her eyes. "And you and Stella? We're heading to Daxam Prime. It's a gamble, but we have to disarm that weapon." The small vessel carrying Anya and her team pierced the void towards the mining colony. Inside, chaos reigned. Krill soldiers, clad in black armor, systematically executed miners who resisted. Anya, leading the charge, burst through a barricade, her pulse rifle spitting blue energy bolts. "For the Daxamites!" she roared, the cry echoing through the ravaged tunnels. The fight was brutal, close-quarters combat. Anya, using her knowledge of Krill tactics gleaned from intercepted comms, anticipated their moves, outflanking and overwhelming them. She moved with a speed that belied her frame, a whirlwind of controlled aggression. Finally, she cornered Vark, the Krill commander, a hulking figure radiating arrogance. "You can't win, human," Vark sneered, his voice a guttural growl. "Daxam is finished." "Not today," Anya spat back, her eyes blazing. She feinted left, then right, mimicking a Krill attack pattern before unleashing a devastating series of blows that left Vark reeling. "And I found the location of the counter-weapon." She delivered a final, incapacitating blow, leaving him twitching on the ground. Meanwhile, Greg and Stella, aboard their commandeered vessel, activated the temporary cloak. The Krill fleet, a vast armada of menacing warships, loomed ahead. They slipped through the outer perimeter, the cloak holding a fragile shield against detection. But as Daxam Prime filled their viewscreen, a vibrant blue jewel against the black, alarms blared. Cloak failing. The ship's computer shrieked. "We've been detected." Greg wrestled with the controls, sweat beading on his forehead. "Almost there. Just need to override the weapon systems." He tapped furiously at the console, lines of code scrolling across the screen. Damn Krill encryption. Almost there. With a final keystroke, he bypassed the security protocols. "I've got it, disarming magnetic weapon." Now, he sent the weapon's firing codes directly to the Senate. On the planet's surface, as Greg disarmed the magnetic weapon, Anya's team deployed the counter-weapon, a device that emitted a powerful magnetic field. It enveloped Daxam Prime, a shimmering shield deflecting the incoming barrage of magnetic energy. Suddenly, a new fleet emerged from hyperspace, ships bearing the insignia of Senator Valerius. "This is Senator Valerius," a voice boomed across all channels. "Senator Gorin is under arrest for treason. All ships loyal to Gorin stand down." A coordinated strike from Valerius forces crippled Gorin's fleet, turning the tide of battle. Stella, her fingers flying across a makeshift console, transmitted the recovered data logs to the Senate. The truth, stark and undeniable, flooded the galactic network. The terraforming device, the Krill conspiracy, Gorin's lies. In the galactic Senate chamber, pandemonium erupted. Senator Gorin, his face contorted with rage, was dragged away by security forces. His co-conspirators, exposed and disgraced, faced immediate arrest. The vote was swift, unanimous. The Extinction Order was overturned. Reparations were offered to the Daxamites, a promise to rebuild their shattered world. Weeks later, Greg stood before a humble dwelling on a newly established Daxamite colony world. He held a small, worn toy medallion. A Daxamite woman, her eyes filled with a mixture of grief and gratitude, accepted the token. "He spoke of you," she said softly, tears streaming down her face. "He said you would come." Greg felt a weight lift from his shoulders, the promise kept, the debt repaid. Anya, surrounded by Daxamite children, explained the principles of hydroponics, her voice filled with enthusiasm. She was home, finding purpose in rebuilding a shattered culture. On a desolate, dying planet, Greg and Stella stood side by side, watching as the terraforming device activated. A wave of green energy washed across the barren landscape, bringing life back to a dead world. Greg turned to Stella, his heart overflowing. "We did it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Stella smiled, her amber eyes shining. "We did." She reached out, taking his hand. I think I'm starting to love you, Greg." Greg chuckled, a warm, genuine sound. "Took you long enough." He squeezed her hand. "I love you too, Stella, more than I thought possible."